We love shooting, hunting, and educating. So if you want to learn about long-range shooting, you're in the right place. This is the Long Range Addicts Podcast. Shooter ready, stand by.
All right, everybody, welcome. Another Wednesday. I don't know where the hell these weeks go. I mean, it's just crazy. Seems like we just barely finished one of these and we're back again trying to get another episode going or trying to talk about something new. But, recently I had the chance to travel up to the Nightforce ELR challenge put on by Scott Satterley in Wyoming. And I kind of wanted to go over, some of the things that went into that match and how these guys prepared to go into the match. And it's different than preparing, to go to like a PRS match or, like a 1-day match or any of that stuff. There's a whole lot of different things and that you need to go into when you're preparing for this. So I wanted these guys, all three of these guys shot the match last weekend. And I wanted to kind of go through each and everything that they went through to get prepared for it. First off, I want to thank Benchmark Barrels, as always, for sponsoring the show. The GT is going to get spun up this week. Finally got the reamer from Alpha, and we're excited to get going with that. I've got the brass. I got everything. I'm just waiting for that. So we're going to get going. But let's get going on the show because I think this is going to be interesting because, heck, even as always, I'm going to learn something. First off, let's introduce everybody. Brett, let's introduce you first. Tell everybody who you are.
Brett Dorland. Been shooting for about 5 years. I've been trying to do a lot more ROing, dabbling in MD with Jose. And this was my first ELR match up at Nightforce.
So you're kind of a newbie. So we're going to get the perspective of going into it because I know a lot of people ask that. They're like, it's kind of overwhelming. They're like, holy crap, I've never shot to those ranges. I don't know what to prepare for, things like that. And that's one of the big reasons why we've got that. We've got Jose. How you doing, Jose?
Oh, good, man. Finally recovered from the soreness of walking around that huge range.
I don't know. All the pictures I've got of you sitting down.
That's one picture.
Shit. And last but not least, Andy Hawkins. How you doing, Andy?
I'm good. So,
good. You want to introduce yourself?
Yeah, I'm Andy Hawkins from Hawkins Precision. I'm the founder of the company. This is my first ELR match, but I've been shooting competitively for, I guess, since 2014, so 6 years. It was a great time. Had a good time with it.
Yeah, except for all the wind and the dirt and places that you didn't know dirt could be and freaking bus about blew over. I couldn't believe that. Guys, I saw one post that a couple guys were commenting like it got over 55 miles an hour at one point.
Well, one guy had a picture of 61.3, I think was the highest Kestrel picture I saw.
That's freaking hauling ass. You'd hate to be on one of the long range stages at that time. I mean, I don't know. Hold it at the edge of your scope and hopefully it hits.
Pretty much what happened.
Let's kind of go. So, Jose, you've shot the challenge before, right? This is what, your second year?
Second year, yeah. I went up last year for the first time.
So you kind of knew what was going on, but Andy and Brett, this is kind of you guys dipping your toes into, and I know that's a big question that even myself, I'm like, I don't know what to expect going into this. So let's kind of go step by step through, how you guys, I guess, prepared to do this. Now, first off, do you guys have any idea what the top calibers were? Because everybody thinks, it's got to be like a Shy-Tac or a 338 Lapua or something like that. Do you guys, what were they shooting?
So Jorge was shooting George was shooting a 300 Norma. Sean and Lou were both shooting 7. One was shooting a 7 SOM and one was a 7 300 Wisdom. I don't know what was Adam shooting. Adam Cloninger, guy took second.
He was a 300 Norma, is what I'd heard.
And what's interesting is that compared to last year, like last year, 4 of the top 6 were 6.5 PRCs or 6.5 SOMs, but you were dealing with 10 mile an hour winds instead of 40. And it's kind of interesting, like when the conditions really kicked in to watch those bigger calibers kind of separate themselves.
Right. And I saw somebody's post, I think it was this week, where they were like, I think they were top 20 with a 6 Creed. And I'm like, holy hell. What wind were you holding with that bad boy at freaking 2,000 yards with a 35-mile-an-hour crosswind? I mean, that to me is impressive to try and pick up off of that. But I mean, your Kestrel tells you a lot, and it was kind of, I guess there was a lot of gusting, sustained stuff, but it was kind of crazy about how it went. Sorry, I gotta turn my phone off. It's dinging. But so, Brett, what did you shoot? And let's go through the steps of how you prepared for the match.
6.5 PRC is what my caliber was. New to the gun, new to the caliber. Within the last, let me rephrase that. I hunted with it last year, but I really didn't take it to distance much. Was able to screw on a new barrel on it this year. Was able to take it out to distance. I don't know if it was that much of a hindrance being with the 6.5. Bullet selection, I think, is a lot into it. And second chances with the second shot is what I think made a lot of guys' match, is be able to have good enough glass to see your first miss for the second impact.
Sorry, I'm responding to people. Yeah, and that's the thing is, I know Jose, and we won't name the bullet manufacturer, any of that, but you were shooting the same caliber, but you were having issues with bullets coming apart and different things. I mean, we could even see them coming out of the barrel and exploding, which was freaking crazy right in front of your face. But I mean, that's kind of a kick in the butt, going back to last week's episode, the mental picture of it, trying to go into it. And I know you guys spent a lot of time preparing for this, going out. You guys had some targets set up. You got your BC Trude. You got everything done. And
I wouldn't say a long time. I mean, we spent one weekend, but we dedicated 2 straight days, which I think obviously for Brett really paid off a whole lot. And I think barring gear issues, when bullets made it all the way to the target, they did fairly well. It was a struggle, but it isn't about, I mean, you don't have to go practice 24/7 to be good at this, but like, I think it was invaluable to literally just dedicate 2 days and go by the numbers, really go through the data, not just like, oh yeah, I hit that target, no big deal. Like really truing it up, kind of made some money up.
Yeah, painting targets, making sure you're true, not wind, but elevation wise, and true and backwards. But what did you shoot, Andy?
I shot a 7 SOM, shooting 180 grain hybrids, burger bullets.
And how much time did you spend trying to get, everything behind it and understanding what was going on?
A lot. I really spent a lot of time with it. I broke it in this year. I got the gun. Blue Mountain Precision did the chamber job for me. It's a Lone Peak action. I can't remember exactly when I got it, but into last year, maybe. I shot it a little bit. It shot really good from the get-go, but I wanted to get it fully broken in. Kept shooting it, shot pretty good, but as I shot it more, it shot better. So right before the match, I went and shot the sporting rifle match with it in Raton, New Mexico, and I had a little bit of vertical, so I went back through, cycled a bunch of my brass, resized it all, weight sorted it, neck tension sorted it. I did a lot of work on my brass prep at the very end, just to see if I could get my SDs down and get my vertical kind of squared away. And it worked really well. I had a really low vertical going into the match. I shot about a 3-inch group at 1,300 yards the weekend before the match with it, with the weight sorted brass, and then I chronographed all my different weights of brass. And they were pretty close, but I had enough of the middle weight, and I sorted it 6/10 low and 6/10 high of grain, and then I used that batch of brass for it, and it kept my SDs pretty low and kept it a wind game rather than an elevation game. So the aerodynamic jump keeps it an elevation game anyways.
You should tell them what speed you were running a 7 SOM at.
It was 2,800 feet a second. So I probably had the slowest Probably had the slowest gun that wasn't a 6.5 Creedmoor or something like that out there. So
Without a doubt.
I bet I had the slowest SOM PRC or something like that out there.
The slow and steady wins the race type thing.
Yeah.
You hear a lot about the 7 SOMs. Do you want to kind of explain to everybody what that cartridge is kind of designed for, if you know?
I don't know exactly what it's designed for, but it came out. Remington, I think, was the first manufacturer of 7 SOMs. They did a 300 SOM, a 7 SOM. I think that's the only 2 they did. They were putting them in short action hunting rifles with relatively low bullets in the very beginning. But I don't know, a few years ago, we started seeing them in ELR guns with longer bullets. And I think you can get a lot of velocity out of them. I never tried. I just kind of found a node that works. And that's always been my philosophy, is find a load that works. I don't care if it's really slow. I prefer it to be slow. I know when everything's full of dust and it gets wet and, it can be a mess out at the range. You never know what the conditions are. I don't want to be the guy who has to pound my bolt open. Follow-up shots need to happen pretty quick after you measure them before the condition changes. And I was able to do a lot of that. So it was kind of nice.
Yeah, we talked about that last week on the podcast. In Dog Valley, we had a big rainstorm, and guys were like, they were having hella issues with pressure and speed, and everything was going crazy because they got a little bit of water in their chamber, water on their ammo, and they were trying to push it down too fast. And that in my opinion, no matter what you're shooting at, whether you're shooting in the middle of the range, as long as you know what the hell your gun's doing, trying to stand on a bullet, what exactly is that going to accomplish, in the long run, except probably give you issues. I've seen too many issues where they have extractors pull out, or, like you said, you stick brass or different things like that because you're trying to do something with a cartridge that maybe it wasn't necessarily designed to do. That happens nonstop all the time. So you running at the bottom of it, at least you know where it's running and you know how it shoots. So I think that's the whole point to take away from that.
Yeah, I also water tested it. I didn't know what was going to happen. So one of the days when I was shooting it, I was checking my load, and I got a really good load that I liked. I poured some water on my ammo, and I shot it, and I checked to see how it would handle the water, because that's usually the big problem that people have, is all of a sudden it spits rain for a little while, and you start piercing primers, you destroy a trigger, you scrap all your brass. It's not like anybody's using inexpensive components at this game. Mm-hmm. We all use nice stuff. And, run over pressure, you can just throw away all the brass you're shooting the whole match. It's a couple $100 out the window.
Right. So when you were getting ready for the match, kind of what was your step-by-step process? Did you go out and stretch it, to 1,800 yards, or what did you do to get ready?
I did. I started out, I shot it at 100 yards a lot first until I got, 100 rounds, 120 rounds downrange. Cleaned it a lot in that time period. I'm not a firm believer in barrel break-ins, but I wanted to make sure that if this gun needed it, I didn't have time to throw another barrel on and go like you could do at a PRS match, or grab a different. I have a 300 Norma mag, but it's 14 pounds, and I don't think I could have managed the recoil well enough to shoot it at the match. So I shot it a lot at 100 yards and played with my SDs and loads and groups and zero and did all that, and then I started shooting it I would go to the range that I go to. It's got a stationary line, but behind it's a stationary berm and a movable firing line. I'm sorry. But behind the stationary berm, it's like 870 yards, and there's some range steel back there, some IPSCs with hit indicators. So I would take my IPSC out, I would paint it, draw a water line on it. I'd shoot it at 1,300, watch the vertical, and then I'd shoot the range steel directly behind it. It's like 1950 to 1980. There's quite a few pieces out there. I'd just range them with my SIGs and put it in ABX mode, so go right to my Kestrel, and I'd shoot at them. And you have to go really early since it's a stationary berm and a moving firing line, so you kind of have to gate it off before everybody shows up. So it's an hour and a half drive. So I'd leave my house at like 3:30 in the morning, 4 o'clock, and get down there real quick, set up my steel, go set up the gate. As soon as it was light enough to shoot, I'd shoot it. So I got to shoot 1,900 yards and, zero wind to 4 or 5 miles an hour usually. So I trued it up, and my BC, I just used a G7. It lined up all the way up, so it was good.
Yeah. Then so like Brad, in your situation, or you and Jose, now you guys went out and trued your BC. Do you want to kind of explain to the listeners about how you went about truing your BC? Because I know that a lot of people don't take that into effect, especially like in the hunting aspect and different things. They need to understand what their bullet's going to do. You know, you've got custom drag curves, you've got the ability to do a lot of that and apply ballistics, but you know, depending on what it is and what velocity is, depends on the BC. So, what did you guys do to go out and to true that information?
Well, I found on when Jose was kind of teaching me this was going out to the 2,000 targets the weekend before, being able to get onto a 2,000 target, get your water line of where you're hitting, and then true BC there and walk it back in to your 800 yards and then make sure that it trues all the way through was a lot easier than trying to start, close and move out. But BCs on the bullets I was shooting seemed to be pretty steady. I had to true a little bit up on them. They were flying a little bit better than I thought. But I think the biggest takeaway of even just the practice was the need for a good kestrel to be able to catch up and keep up with changing conditions. A guy can write down as much dope as he wants to on paper, on a cell phone app, but in the long run, at 2,000 yards, you start losing atmospheric quick change, and that's 0.5 mils sometimes, and I mean it can really change fast.
So one, I don't want anyone to get intimidated, right? We talked about like, new people that are going to come shoot this or whatever. Andy's mentioned 1970 a lot. Brett's mentioned that we've shot to 2,000 a lot. Last year, prepping, I could only shoot to about 1,400 yards before actually going to the match. This year, Brett and I are lucky enough. I've done a whole bunch of public land scouting up here and gotten really fortunate to kind of find a little honey hole that lets us like safely drive targets all the way out to actually about 2,400 yards if we wanted to. But you don't have to have that. If you look at the match book from this year or last year, I think last year there was 2 shots past 1,600. This year there was 5 or 6 maybe, if somebody can correct me. And that's out of 76 to 78 targets a year. Where you really make your money is at 1,000 to 1,500, just a little bit longer than PRS goes. And so that's really, I knew I was using the same bullet this year that I did last year. And I knew that it starts losing BC pretty fast at past 1,200. I was pretty impressed with Brett's bullets that they stayed true so far. It's a real testament to just learning your bullets and also just picking. Sometimes that 5-10 cents more a round is worth just the ease of use and stuff. But I knew that I was going to have to go out and really true mine up. So really what I did is I took my G7, started at 1,000, and we drove down and painted targets. Every 10 shots or so, we'd paint targets so we could see, like, white targets, black water line, and we could see exactly where we were hitting. We used the phone scope a lot. I'd video a stage, and we could watch. We literally slow-mo it and watch that trace go in, delete the video off the phone, save the memory, and do it all over again. But I was really worried about truing up that 1,000 to 1,600 because I just really felt like, inside of 1,000, I'd take a tenth or two off. Past 1,600 for those 5 targets, whatever they were, I just kind of took a guess, honestly, for trying to hit that first shot on, I'd add a tenth, 2 tenths, or even I knew at 2,000, I actually had to add about a half a mil even to the trued up 1,000 to 1,600 BC. But where I really tried to true my BC was something that worked real effective in that 1,100 to 1,600 range. And it isn't that hard for people to spend a day or two. I mean, you might have to drive, like Andy said, hour and a half, 2 hours or something, but you find a chance to go, spend that half day, whole day, day and a half shooting that distance and really true up. The rest of it really just comes down to your form. You know what I mean? You get your good dope and the rest of it's on you. So.
Yeah. And so I guess one of the big things with everybody saw all the wind, and I think a lot of people might have got overwhelmed with, holy shit, it blows that hard, trying to understand it. And as I said, a constant wind, once you get a constant wind figured out, you're usually okay. But you had gusting all the way from 30 to 50 to, it was all over the place. And the way whoever's listening, if you don't know, the way this match is set up, so for a first round impact, you get 2 points and you move on to the next target. So you get 2 chances to engage a target if you miss your first one. So one of the big things that these guys were trying to do at first was to engage that first target with 1 round so that they could move on and get their max amount of points. What was the mindset going into it that you guys were like, okay, watching somebody else shoot, kind of helps, but they could be shooting a totally different caliber, different bullet, different everything else. So how did you guys prepare mentally to go into it and figure out your win calls?
Andy?
So, I mean, it's kind of complicated. I don't know as if I'm by far no like serious expert at this. I didn't win the match or anything. So, I mean, I felt like I shot well for a first time, but I'm sure somebody else out there has better methods than I do. I'll go ahead and say that up front. But I kind of tried to take an average wind speed. I measured it. I generally don't measure wind speeds unless it gets really high. And then I really came up with a game plan. I'm going to send my first shot with maybe a little bit below average wind speed. You kind of pull something off your Kestrel, and let's say the average is 25, but the low is 15 and the high is maybe 35. I would go right below the average and say, if it's 25, maybe I'll put 22. I didn't do this every time, so this is just an example, but maybe you put 22 on the uphill side of the target or the upwind side of the target. And you've got all that target width for wind budget. It's going to be 22 miles an hour, right? But you don't know how much it may be. Those real big let-offs, you can't trust those either because those are usually terrain-based. Those might have something to do with where you're sitting. Something might be blocking. I feel like the air pressure builds, on a hill and then it billows over. So the highs and the lows, you can kind of knock them out. But you take a little bit below that average and hope that it drifts in. The average is probably what it is, but if it's a little below that and you put average on there, you might miss. So you kind of want the little bit below average on the front side. That's generally what I did. And a lot of times I've missed just from vertical, from the aerodynamic jump. 30 miles an hour, you can't, trying to figure that out, not in a scenario like we had, is tough. I can never find a day where I go shoot at 2,000 yards with 30 mile an hour wind. It just doesn't ever happen. So I watched a lot. Spent a lot of time in the glass watching people shoot. And if I noticed a pattern where people were shooting low, specifically like there was a stage at the end where everybody was shooting a little low on the antelope, I watched a lot of bullets land by the base of the T-post. And then the correction would go halfway up the T-post. And then the next target, they'd do it again. I kind of knew from that they probably overcompensated for their aerodynamic jump. And so I kind of cut my wind one down on my Kestrel a little bit. It didn't really pan out as well as I wanted to all the time, but I got quite a few hits based on that. But the other thing that you can do, like there was a stage with some wolf targets, and one of them, it had just had the crap beat out of it on one side. And the other one had been hit everywhere. But the left wolf had only been hit on the right side. So you kind of say, well, my elevation is what it is. I'm going to work on that as I go. But my windage, I'm going to put what I think it really is on that first wolf, and then I'm going to add to it for the second one. The reason I think it is because the first wolf was at like an 8 o'clock wind, and the second wolf was like a 9 o'clock wind. I mean, it wasn't that big of a sweep, but it was a little bit of a sweep, and most of the impacts on the left one were all the way on the right side. So in that case, I put whatever my wind value was that was on the center, say it was a 25 miles an hour and I hit it. I moved over to the next one. I put that 25 mile an hour wind hold on the left edge, right? And so kept that, kind of keeps that value consistent, right? So it's a way to solve it, but it's not, every situation's a little different. You kind of have to spend a lot of time thinking about it and come up with a game plan and roll with it if it messes up. So the other thing I did is I wrote down 5 wind values on almost every stage. I got my cards right here. I had a stage here where I did 30, 33, 36, 37, and 42 miles an hour, right? And then whatever one got me looked like it was going to get a correct windage, I mean, you didn't always get a hit with a good wind call, I would transfer that next call. I just use that column. You know, if I needed to put that column on one side of the plate or the other, just kind of watch it. But it's a good reason to run slow, you know, run slow, low pressure velocity, because the gun settles real fast and you get to see the impact. So,
Right. Yeah, and to kind of preface the area of the match, it's right near Casper, Wyoming. So, you know, there's a wind farm there. It's not flat, but it's got a lot of little hills, valleys. You know, it's just there's little knobs everywhere. So these gusts are going to be pushing, pulling, doing all sorts of crazy shit through these valleys. And that's kind of where Andy's talking, you know, whether the wind's coming down and pushing maybe a bullet, instead of just going right to left, it's going up and left or down and left. So you've got to understand what your bullet's going to be doing at the target, plus in between you and the target. So that's one of those big things that these guys kind of have to take into even more consideration as they're going through these stages, trying to figure out what the heck the bullet's doing. And then, you know, I saw it a lot of times on the stage that I was ROing. I'd watch the wind on one shooter and it'd puff and go right. And then the next shooter would come along and it'd puff and go left. And it's like, that's the crazy thing. And that's what was kind of so cool about this match, was it was all over and it was never really consistent. So these guys had to be on point. But what was your kind of idea, your path going into it, Jose?
Man, I went into it. I mean, I was shooting a thin barreled gun, 6.5 caliber. I knew I wasn't, you know, I was running a V6 and a V8 race in a lot of ways, which is fine. Like, I went in there wanting to have fun. Honestly, I went in there same as last year. I totally look at the match. Praise God for Scott Satterley. It's $300 for someone to spend a whole heck of a lot of time for me to go out there and just shoot an awesome shooting park that I'd never get to shoot before, right? Regardless of what happened, regardless of the awesome prize table, anything, it's just a cool setup. You're shooting 50% elk and 4% T-Rexes and all sorts of stuff. So I went in there just like, how many second round hits could I get? Like, I literally made sure I loaded the exact amount of rounds I needed to not have a single first round impact. And kind of it was just like, I like to judge how good can I call my second shot, you know, and part of that was the form on your first shot equal to the second shot. So I test myself there a little bit different than I think a lot of guys do. I didn't go in there like, hey, I'm this ELR stud or anything, but with the wind, kind of what I learned, even just from our practice when me and Brett were out practicing the weekend before with Lou Smith, another guy who finished top 10 there at the match, was that I kept trying to outsmart my dope. Kind of like I'd be like, oh, I know the wind was this 10 minutes ago, and I'd look at my Kestrel and be like, oh, that's bull crap, and I'd try to outsmart it. And so really, I kind of just went with the Andy style again, just like, okay, what's the best hedging of your bets? You know, I'm going to take this average and know I'm close rather than do something that's completely wonky that I can't adjust for, you know? And so that was my thing. I wanted to get close enough to the target that spotting the hit was easy. And like Andy, I mean, you really should stay on the glass for, you know, you should prep your gear when you get to the stage, and you should be on glass for 2 shooters before you and be able to just pick up your gun and go. You'll stress yourself a lot less that way. And there's times you'll notice trends and pick up a hit or two a stage that you wouldn't have otherwise had you not focused real well like that. So.
Yeah. What about you, Brett? You finished, I mean, you were what? You were top 50. You were 30 something, 31st out of what, almost 200 shooters?
Yeah.
I think they said 191 finished.
That's
and
impressive.
Andy was top 22.
Yeah. You guys did a good job. So what was your thought going into it, Brett?
You know, it really kept my mind open of what to expect. I've only shot one national match before. I shot the TPRC down in Phoenix 2 years ago. So I kind of kept an open mind. Thought I had good dope coming in. Tried to get my SDs as low as I possibly could. Dope as good as I could. My biggest drawback, I think, was I tried to do everything by card or by, write all my information down on numerous cards and try to keep up with everything. And that's a hard way to do it, especially if the wind blowing, stuff's blowing everywhere. You get things are crazy anyway, and all of a sudden it's your turn to shoot, and you're just not prepared. It was overwhelming the first few stages for me just to kind of catch up. But once the nerves and everything else finally took over where you could concentrate, then it all fell in place for me. My biggest, I think, my goal was to get that second hit. No matter what I did on the first one, hit it great. If not, rack that bolt as fast as possible, watch that second one hit, and try to do the best job of adjusting on their second hit to get that point. If you get half your points by, a second round hit, it's a heck of a lot better than getting no hits. So by doing that, I think I kept myself in it to the end by just trying to do good adjustments.
Yeah, sorry. I suck at multitasking, so I'm trying to type and respond to people and do all this, and I'm off in La La Land. But so, I mean, this is the thing. Every one of these guys were on glass watching them, and everybody had to hold on. Like it's been a long time since I've seen wind blow like that, because you couldn't leave your glass up, which was crazy because everybody's freaking binos were blowing over, everything was blowing over. It was that windy. And so the way the match was set up, which even throws another wrench in this, was it was kind of in a big circle. So depending on where you were at during the day, you always had different winds to react with or to shoot differently with. So it kind of really challenged them that way too. Now, when you guys kind of signed up for this, I guess, how do I put this? Were you guys coming into it thinking that there would be, a lot more longer stages into it, you newer guys? Or, I think because a lot of people preface ELR with everybody thinks it's like more than 1,200 yards or more than 1,500 yards or more than something. What is ELR in particular? When you guys signed up for it, what were you guys expecting to even shoot? I guess I could ask that. What were you expecting, Brett?
I expected bigger targets myself. They were some small darn targets there. That first stage when we crawled up on there, and I see a 10% Velociraptor or whatever the heck we shot at the first. T-Rex. Sorry, I honestly thought that, man, it's gonna be a long weekend, and it didn't get much bigger. So yeah, it can get to you fast on what you're expecting, and you got to roll with it, and you got to adjust. And I think that's the biggest takeaway on me was learn it, and next year is going to be a lot better because we'll know what we're expecting. And where else can you get $300 worth of the best ELR training there is at this match? I mean, truly, go shoot it and learn. There wasn't one stage I didn't learn something new, and it was very impressive all the way around.
Yeah. What about you, Andy? What did you think coming into it?
I talked to a few people about it. People who'd shot Cute Creek last year, so I kind of knew the targets would be far, and I didn't have any expectations for myself. I wanted to hit a few targets for sure. I mean, you always want to hit targets. I figured it would be a lot like 4-target troop lines and PRS matches. It kind of hit to move or 2 shots per target or whatever it was. I figured it'd be a game of follow-up shots, just like a PRS match can be. You hope you get your first round impact, but if you don't, you have to convert it to wind speed and you have to move. I didn't figure this was going to be a whole lot different, just more flight time and more recoil. So I didn't expect when I signed up for it that we'd be shooting in 15 to 50 mile an hour wind, but we roll with that too. So
yeah,
it was a lot of fun.
Yeah, and I know, as a match director, you want the top people to be in that, 80% hit rate, 80 to 85% hit rate. And then it kind of, filters down. And I know Scott sent an email or a message out later that he wanted to make the targets a little bit bigger, even with the win next year. And, that's one of the biggest thing that kind of gets in your head. You get a little teeny target out there and it truly like starts messing with you because no matter what you do, it's a dang small target at that far. What was the top person shot of 60? What did George shoot? Like a 60 something
It
percent?
was 63, I think, 63%.
Where was the average in the field?
A lot less.
But with 50,
I think George scored a 98, and I think it took about a 55 just to get in the top 100, if I remember correctly.
really, how far? And I guess I never even looked at it because I wasn't on the list. But so everybody was between what, like a 60 and a 50 or something for top 100, or what was it? Is that percentage or hit? What was the?
Oh, yeah, sorry. I'm talking about the score. So if 98 was a 63%, then 55 would have been somewhere in the high 30% just to end up in the top half of the match.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, and I kept telling people, everybody's like, man, I'm just not hitting anything. I don't know what's wrong. I'm like, look, it's a little bit harder match. That's just how it is. But Scott did set up a good course fire. He's on here. He says he's already ordered bigger T-Rex and moved some targets around. But a lot of people will complain about targets. No matter what you freaking do, there's always going to be targets. One thing that Scott did have out there, and I was completely amazed being a match director, is the amount of steel and the amount of big steel he has. I mean, he's got freaking elk out there. He's got T-Rexes. He's got turkeys. He's got hogs. He's got all this crap. I'm like, holy shit, as a match director, I don't think I could have freaking I don't the amount of money that he's invested in that match, and it shows. There's 200 and something people, and then you've got Nick setting on the backside of it doing. I wish I had a Nick setting. That would make my freaking matches go a lot easier. Hey Nick, go find me a whole bunch of freaking prizes so I don't have to worry about it. It's one of those things. But both of those guys together put on a thoroughly good match. Let's go through your after actions, guys, and kind of tell us, just because Scott's listening, don't let him go easy. Let's hear your true thoughts. Brett, what is your after action on the match, and what do you think could have been different, or what would you have liked to have seen? Stuff like that.
Again, I'm a pretty noob at this. I know we've shot a lot up at team matches up in Wyoming. I know what the wind can do up there. I know what everything is, but it's everything seemed to work really well. We had a great venue to shoot in. That Tillard Ranch was spectacular. We had good support. If you needed anything, you got a hold of an RO. They took care of you. Fantastic squatting. It's hard to pin something down and say, hey, I wish you would have done something different, because honestly, it was made to have a good time, and I had a darn good time.
Yeah, and that's what the biggest part about it is, just having a good time. What about you, Andy?
I really liked it. I mean, I kind of went into this with the amount of prep I spent getting my gun ready and making sure my dope was all trued up. I was like, man, this is so much more work than going into a PRS match. Like, this might be a one-time thing for me. It was kind of what I was thinking. And then about halfway through day one, I was like, yeah, I'm coming back every year. It's just unduplicatable. You cannot find a match anywhere in the country where you can shoot in, 1,800 yards and 300-degree course of fire, where you're changing your wind angles, you're changing your wind speeds, I held 9 mils on a target. I mean, a lot of people might blame Scott Satterley for that wind, but I would say it was pretty awesome. It was nice. So I give it a real high rating. All the matches I've ever shot, it's very high up there. So everything ran well. I felt like it was fair. That's a big thing with targets that far. You can go to a match and there'll be one small area where you have targets, and the rest of the match is 800 and in, and there's a couple 1,500-yard targets somewhere. Those stages can be throwaways, kind of. Just because you might have to shoot them when the wind's blowing 30 miles an hour, and somebody might have got to shoot them when it was blowing 2. At least here, everybody had the same wind condition and about the same target distances. So that's a huge deal for anybody who's shooting something, to feel like your start position doesn't necessarily change your outcome. So I think that's a great thing. I don't know. I mean, I think the whole match was really well run. I felt like we shot for a really long time on day one. I mean, we were out there till 7 o'clock. I don't know how you could have fixed that, but I think we were all pretty wore out on day 2. That's how I feel about the whole thing. It was pretty good.
Yeah. And I think one of the biggest reasons why it took so damn long on day 1, and I learned this the hard way this year, we wanted to do something completely different and let some of the stages self-RO. You've got to have somebody there whipping these freaking guys along, because there were some of those squads, they'd screw around and they'd kind of watch wind. And I watched a couple of them honestly sit there and wait for the wind to die down. It's like, you just need to get up there and shoot, because you're going to freaking screw everybody behind you. And that's what would happen. I'd get like 3 groups coming through my stage at once because of the one group in front of them. But as Scott, and as a match director, it's almost impossible to get, ROs for 20 stages. I found that out this year, and it kicked my ass. And it's one of those things that you're going to have give and take with a match as big as this, especially when you've got 20 squads with 12 or 13 shooters in them. But I think the biggest thing is trying to figure out how to get everybody constantly moving, and whether that's an RO every other stage to push them through, I don't know, and I'm still trying to figure that out as a match director myself, because I don't know. What do you think?
I would say, and this is completely selfish, but because trust me, I'll be back next year with the bigger, better gun after 2 years of hindering myself, and I will not miss this match. It's a great match. This is completely being selfish, but the RO at every stage, part of that is literally just not handing around the score iPad, because then you've got like 4 people. Like on day 1, it seemed like we had 4 people that kept switching it out, and on day 2 it was 4 different people, but still it'd be like, all of a sudden you're like, oh crap, I'm 2 shooters away. And you're like, hey, who's going to take this? Well, nobody's even looking because they're overloading their mags and whatever. And literally like self-spotting, if you literally only had 1 RO per stage, like if you only had 20 ROs, just have an RO to run the scorebook, and there's plenty of spotters, but just the person that can literally be like, hey, get your butt up here. Because when it's self-RO'd, a lot of times the shooter's not going to be like, hey, you get up here, because then somebody's going to yell at them the next time. And that's just how you feel. Where when there's an unbiased RO running the scorecard, let it be self-spotted. But and this year especially, like there's no way you can blame anybody. You got COVID and you're out in the middle of a farm in the middle of nowhere, Wyoming, where the entire state of Wyoming population is smaller than the county I live in. Like you can't blame anybody. But the self-ROing would have kept it a little bit. I mean, a dedicated scorer RO would have kept it faster. And then from the selfish side, I just like to bull crap during the stages. And between everyone having to spot and the scorecard and just how freaking loud the wind was, there wasn't quite as much socialization, I guess, as you'd be used to, just shooting the crap with your fellow shooters. And that was kind of hard this year because we were all driving. Like we all wanted to get 12 stages done on Saturday, which I love. I wish more matches would shoot more on Saturday than Sunday so that you can get home on Sunday, right? And I loved that setup, but we were all kind of driving at that goal, and it wasn't as much socialization, let's say.
Yeah, and I wasn't even shooting. By the end of day 1, I was like, shit, that's kicking my ass. But, that's just the nature of the beast, and that's how it goes. The very first year coming back to when I was a match director, understanding target sizes versus, never going to know what the weather does. So when you set up the match, a month or whatever it is before, as a shooter, people also need to realize that the match director's got it set up, and they hope that it's going to be within this. No one plans for 50-mile-an-hour winds. No one plans for torrential downpours like we had in Dogfight this year. And shooters as a whole need to understand that as well. So if there's any negative out there, it's like, well, go ahead, go shoot, go set up a match and let us know how it goes, because you're never going to know, how that goes. And, that was the cool thing about kind of, watching some of the guys and gals shoot his match, coming back to his target array systems, because people are used to shooting like a square or, a circle or something. It's amazing in this match watching people shoot between legs or over the back or over the horns or different things. And I think that kind of set this match apart a little bit more, having the target systems and the target arrays that he had. The other one that I was really impressed with was the stage that was right next to mine, where everybody shot for group. So you had the 3-shot group, but what was it, 9 something?
976.
And I think the winner shot like a 2-inch 3-shot group, barely over 2-inch group at 900 something yards. It's like, was that complete luck? Because there was quite a few shooters that did it. I watched Eric Anderson shoot a 0.6 2-shot group, and then he pulled his last one to like a 9-inch group. But
So believe it or not, the top 3 shooters, I have it pulled up here, were all under 3 inches, and the top 6 shooters were all under 4 inches. In a 40-mile-an-hour wind, mind you.
That's a freaking teeny ass group at 19 yards.
Yeah.
I can't even get that to percentages in what that would be, like a point, whatever it is. But that's
basically that's a 0.2 group in the wind at that distance.
Yeah. So the way, let me go back. The way this stage was set up was that there was a target sitting off to the side of it, and they had, what is it, shot marker system? What's it called? The heck's it called?
I just thought it was called the shot marker. I have no idea.
Yeah. So it's got 4 sensors in it, and then you shoot through it, and it senses where within the grid pattern that you shoot. So off to the side, they had a target that you'd engage first. So you get, 3 rounds to shoot this target and try and hit it to make sure you were close. Then you'd move over and shoot your group on the piece of plate within the shot marker system. And on the shot marker system, it sends it to an iPad, which the ROs were watching. And they could then see where you're hitting and understand, kind of what it was. So for you listeners that didn't know what we were talking about, that's what it is. So it's a system that transitions it back. And anybody can go buy that system. I'm not sure. Scott says shot marker. So anybody can go buy that, which was really neat because you can set it up at pretty much any distance you want, and it reads back into the iPad system. So maybe
saying anyone is a strong word. If I remember at SHOT Show, that was like north of $8,000 for that system.
It is?
I'm pretty sure. I could be wrong.
Are they the same guys that did the auto trickler, right?
Yeah, that's what I thought. Maybe it wasn't that extreme, but it was pretty pricey.
Oh, it's just pocket change to some of these guys. I mean,
nope, I lied. I'm looking at it right now. It's $7.99. That's not near as bad as I would have thought.
No, so for like a local match or for a range, it might be a really good freaking thing to have at the range. I don't know. I mean, I got spoiled working at Barnes for 6 years. I had an Ailer system. Hell, I had everything. It gave me curves. It gave me all sorts of shit that was badass. Now I don't have anything, and I don't know what to do with myself. I got to go to the range and do it like everybody else. I'm screwed. Gotta go put my magneto speed on and figure out what point of him like shift is by putting the magneto speed and everything on there. I've got to learn to be with everybody else. But Scott says about $900, and then the stand was a bunch. I've seen like Nico and those guys build their own custom stands. They just weld a frame and put it in there. But I guess if you shoot it at far, that sucks. But so I guess let's go to the next question. And I know Nick asked this. Of course, Nick's watching. We gotta give a shout out to Nick. If nobody knows who Nick is, Nick's the assistant helper to Andy at Hawkins. A lot of people that call it Hawkins, they'll know who Nick is.
Nick's the marketing guy.
Yeah, marketing guy. I don't know. Hell, I call him when I need to buy something too. So he's like the go-to guy for different stuff. When Andy just goes and builds stuff. So I guess I don't know how that works, but so he asked, if you're going to stick with the same cartridge next year, and if you're not, why? Like, what were you going to go to? So what do you got? You start, Brett.
Oh, I'm staying with the 6.5 PRC. I don't feel I was handcuffed the whole time there. Like Jose said, you're what, 5 shots over 1,600, 1,800, whatever it was. Everything else from 15 on down, it's more than capable. So I'm absolutely going to stay with what I've used this year. My biggest change is going to be better doe kestrel. I was able to pick a kestrel off the table. Thanks, Scott. And things are going to get better. So that I think will be a lot better for myself.
All right. What about you, Andy?
I don't plan on changing anything. So I'm going to run it the way it was.
You're comfortable. You know
I
you're
am.
going to have everything going on. Just as long as you don't burn the barrel up between now and then, you're all right.
Probably won't shoot it between now and then. I'm going to chronograph my loads that I have left over and see if my velocity changed. And, prep my brass sometime in the next, 8 or 9 months and start it again. It's got 450 rounds on it.
You need to go take a pressure washer and get all the shit out of it. But other than that, you're just going to run it like you stole it.
Yep, exactly. So
You're going to have a Hawkins DVM and everything on it, guaranteed.
it does already.
I'm pretty sure all three of us were running Hawkins rings of various kinds.
Do I have any in here? I might. I don't know. I got to look around. I did. Oh, what about you, Jose?
I'm changing. And not – the PRC is fine. But mainly I was running – me and Courtney both are running our hunting guns. Now she's ran her hunting gun 2 years in a row, and so she's got, almost 1,000 rounds down a PRC that hasn't killed an animal yet thanks to 2 matches. So we're going to kind of let the hunting guns get a break, and we kind of committed enough to these matches that we're getting out of the hunter class, building a heavy, long-barreled 7-som, and like a PRC would be fine. Like Brett's absolutely correct. But if I'm going to put money into another gun, I'm just going to go to something that I feel is the most optimal. Without buying a long action, I'm going to stick with my impact with a Magnum bolt face. I'm just going to go to the 7-som and run it. So.
Yeah, that 7-som's getting to be really popular. I can't believe how many people are starting to kind of go to it. 'Cause you've got a smaller action. I guess it's a lot more, consistent from shot to shot than some of the other, big bore long action cartridges. I guess that's kind of why you guys chose it, right?
Yeah, seems like. And also, even just like today, I was reading that, there's rumors that more people. Oh, that was rude, Courtney. I was reading today where there's rumors that more companies are coming out with those medium actions too. So then you can save the weight of the long action or just the overall big build, but still get a little bit more performance out of those guys that like to hot rod the Soms and the Wisdoms and whatnot.
Yeah, and I think it's a good choice. I don't know. I've been looking at it because I like my short mags. I've got a 300 short mag, and I love the thing to death. The velocity and everything you can push that bullet out of there is freaking nuts. For such a little efficient cartridge, you got less, and everybody's like, "Oh, I gotta have a run. But I like those little short actions. The ultra mags and stuff. But I guess that's kind of everything. I mean, overall, in my opinion, the match went really, really good. Can you guys hear that?
Yes.
What the hell is it?
It's not me. I'm muted.
It sounds like somebody's freaking eating Cheetos. Huh. All right. Well, I don't know. Everybody unless I'm eating Cheetos or whatever the hell it is. Anyway, I mean, overall, the match to me was put together really well. I mean, especially for moving it, short. It was going to be at Q Creek Ranch. Everything kind of went sideways. Everybody's there's guns, so we can't have it type thing. And Tad Anderson, those guys, kind of helped along with it. And, short time moving it. Thank Casey Tillard, the Tillards. I've known Casey for a few years. Great group of people. Still trying to get a freaking antelope tag up there. I got to figure out how to pay him off. But, all in all, it seemed really, really well put together. I even took some pictures of them porta shitters because those are freaking nuts. I'm trying to send them to my porta potty company. So they're porta potties and they got a garbage dumpster on the back of them. I'm like, where's that been my whole freaking match director life? it's amazing little things. And that's one thing I have fun being a match director, going to other people's matches is learning from them. And there's always something you watch and like, oh, I would have done that different, or I would have done this. But I always try to take something away from each one of them. And, for what they had for COVID, we had issues with our award ceremony and different things. I had a nightmare, and they, for last minute, they did a really good job putting it together. I think everybody, for the most part, I didn't hear anybody really bitching. I didn't hear any complaints. Everybody seemed to go off pretty decent without a hitch. It was quite a drive from Casper, but I mean, if you're going to shoot this far and do your thing, where else were you going to go? It's not going to be close to a city or a town. So that was definitely, it's all in, how you go about designing it and everything. And I'll have to give Scott kudos for everything that went together. And I got to give Nick shit because he found a box of freaking prizes, after the fact, after everybody's, oh, hell, he lost his shit after he found that. So I got to give Setting a little bit of crap for that, but he did find it. That's where Dorland got his Kestrel after he took his prize back, because he figured out he had a Kestrel. But other than that, all in all, it was good. I also found out the freaking bus gets like 1 mile to the gallon, and it has a 20-gallon tank. So every other city in Wyoming has a credit card statement from Team POI for traveling to Wyoming, which freaking hurt pretty bad in the old pocketbook. But other than that, do you guys have anything to finish out, to say to Scott, to say about the match, or to tell anybody that might be thinking about shooting the match? What do you guys got?
I'd tell Scott not to grow them too fat, not to grow the targets too much. I'm with Andy, honestly. I mean, obviously I sucked for various reasons, but I actually loved I thought it was really fair targets. I mean, you'd shoot a full-size elk on one, and then you'd shoot a 1.5 MOA circle at 1200 on another. And really, you could have a meatball match and everybody'd enjoy that. That's absolutely fine. But if we're really going to say we're testing the limits, maybe a little bit bigger on 25% of the stages to up your percentage, but I wouldn't make the whole match easier. I love the design of the match. 100% love the design of the match.
Yeah. What about you, Andy?
Well, target sizes, I feel the same way. I mean, obviously, the hit percentage was really good considering the condition for the people who were in the very top. So I think they shot a very good hit percentage, and I wouldn't change anything if I were Scott. I would tell people, don't be afraid to get out there and do it. It's going to take a little bit of work to get it done, but it's definitely worth it. Don't be afraid. It's a great group of people that shoot these things. I mean, you can't find a better group of people than you see at some of these 2-day national level competitions, whether it's an unaffiliated match like this, or PRS or NRL, or, competition dynamics. I mean, they're, if you have the, desire and you have the gear, get out and do it. It's a great thing to do. It's kind of, for a lot of us, I think the first national level match we ever went to, or the first, club match or ELR match or whatever it was, the first event, it's kind of a life-changing thing for most people who do it. Like one day you're like, oh yeah, that was my life before that, and this is my life after it. It's a big difference. So I would just encourage people to get out and try.
No, go ahead. No, I think the biggest thing, I'm going to be honest, I came into this being a freaking complete and utter pansy, because the weekend before I had my match and I was just completely full of excuses why I couldn't go shoot this match. Honestly, everybody goes, why aren't you shooting? And I'm like, I'm going to be honest, I'm just full of excuses. And the biggest thing was I was there the year before, but I was only there during sight-in. I didn't get to see the course fired. I didn't get to see all that. And, I was a little bit like, shit, I'm not even ready. I've got guns. Hell, I built Lapuas. I've got 6.5 Creeds. I've got all sorts of, or 6.5 PRCs. I've got Nozzlers. I've got all sorts of stuff that I built that I could go shoot it with. The biggest excuse was just getting it out of my head, honestly. And, after going to the match, and I'm going to say this, like I say almost every episode, go RO a match if you're worried about it. Go learn the match, and then the next year, go shoot it. And that helped me a lot. Even, I've been in this industry for almost a decade, that stuff still helps me to this day, getting it through my head that you can do this. Why the hell are you making excuses not to go do it? So I went and watched. I watched everybody suck about the same all the way across the board. And I'm like, I could have came here and I could have learned and I could have shot and I could have done that. And I just made excuses. So
You could have sucked too.
no, I definitely would have sucked, but at least I would have sucked with you. That was the biggest.
Suck together.
Yeah. Yep. So that's the thing, is get out there, suck up your pride, and just go do it. Even if you take the bottom third of the match, who cares? At least you learn something. So the next year, you know what you need to do to go back and be better at it. Right. So that's what I'm going to challenge all of you listening to right now is go out there and, quit making excuses. I'll be the first one to say that I need to quit doing it, and, just get out there and shoot. There is another chance to do a match like this, and it is another Scott Satterley match. It's going to be in Grand Junction, outside Grand Junction, Colorado in August. It's the Hornady, what is it? Hornady Precision Challenge, Precision Hunter Challenge, something like that. And according to Nick Setting, there are a few slots left, and there is a group. Go look for the Hornady Precision Challenge in August, right outside of Grand Junction, and you're going to have the chance to do this all again. But it's going to be a little bit different, where there are some stages you've got to do different things on, which is going to be interesting. But I'll be there. I'll be shooting it. I'll be sucking it up. So it'll be interesting. Hopefully we see some of you guys there, but I want to appreciate everybody for tuning in tonight. For you listening out there, we appreciate you always for listening. Thanks, Andy. Appreciate you coming on, spending a late night.
Thank you, guys. I appreciate it.
Thank y'all.
Yeah. And if you want some badass bottom metals, rings, bases, different things like that, look at Hawkins Precision. They're right here. And they're actually in Colorado. And they're a big supporter of the shooting sports. So make sure you support who support us first. Appreciate these guys coming on. Appreciate Scott for being on here, commenting a little bit. It takes a lot for a match director to take criticism, whether it's good or bad. I know I get a lot of it all the time. Everybody's always better than me. That's, I challenge everybody. If you think you're better than a match director, go run your own match and let us know how it goes for you. But anyway, thank you all for listening. Hope you have a good night. Stay safe, and hopefully we see you shooting soon.
Thanks.
See y'all.
Don't be afraid to pipe up. Send us your questions or topics, and we'll cover them on the show. Thanks for listening.